a one-stop destination for the English medium civil services aspirants. We are at Manzil 2025, a flagship event of Unacademy for the civil services preparation. Join us live today, 12 p.m. onwards on UPSC Unstoppables channel. The link is provided in the video description. Get inspired by the UPSC CSE 2024 Toppers, and there are a lot of events planned for this day. Please join us 12 p.m. onwards, and let's get started with the analysis of today's The Hindu newspaper. There are in total 5 topics that we shall be discussing. I'll take up one article, Mukesh sir would discuss 2, Sham sir and Abhishek sir would discuss one topic each. First up, let's discuss what is this Shimla agreement all about, which Pakistan has said, although not directly but indirectly, that we have the option of coming out of all the bilateral agreements. The year was 1971. India and Pakistan fought a war which led to the emergence of Bangladesh as an independent entity. Pakistan was defeated miserably in this war. And then Russia played a very important role, negotiated, and it ultimately led to a peace treaty, which is what we call the Shimla Accord of 1971. There were 2 major objectives here. More than 93,000 Pakistani troops who were the prisoners of war, they had to be returned to Pakistan. And second, Jammu and Kashmir, which was an international issue. Both the sides agreed that we will resolve Jammu and Kashmir bilaterally. Because if you recall, 1947, when India became independent, and then Pakistan attacked Kashmir and wanted to forcefully acquire Jammu and Kashmir, the matter was then taken by the government of India to the United Nations. And United Nations Security Council also asked for a plebiscite on Jammu and Kashmir. So this issue of Jammu and Kashmir became internationalized. And this is what the government of India regretted, because in 1948, United Nations, as it is today, was under the grip of United States. And United States and Pakistan were closer to each other. And United States prevailed over United Nations Security Council, and India was left embarrassed. And we regretted for taking Jammu and Kashmir issue to United Nations. And since then, various international organizations as well as countries have been trying to negotiate between India and Pakistan to resolve Jammu and Kashmir. But then in 1971, when Shimla Accord was signed, the government of India made it clear that Jammu and Kashmir is a matter that is to be resolved bilaterally. We do not want international attention on this. We do not want a third-party mediation on Jammu and Kashmir. Although this Shimla agreement was also criticized in 1971, Mrs. Gandhi's government was criticized for not forcing Pakistan, because it was a defeated country, for not forcing Pakistan to convert line of control into an international border, for retaining LOC as the line between India and Pakistan, although we had the opportunity of converting LOC into an international border. And this Shimla agreement was also criticized by political parties in Jammu and Kashmir, saying we were not consulted in the Shimla Accord. But if Pakistan says that we have the option of coming out of all the bilateral agreements, which include Shimla Accord, what would be the ramifications for that? That is something that we need to understand from GS2 perspective. Also, when we look at Indus Water Treaty, which the government of India has said we are going to put on abeyance, Pakistan has said if you block water, we are going to treat it as an act of war. Mukesh sir, do we have the capability to block the waters of Indus from flowing into Pakistan? We being an upper riparian state, we have that potential or the capability, and it is going to impact Pakistan and Bangladesh for that matter if we are going to disrupt the waters on the eastern side. Can China also do it to us? And has China done that in the past?
A very pertinent question, sir, and absolutely yes. Your first question regarding can we and do we have the potential to block the waters of River Indus? we as of now do not have enough capacity, water storage capacity, so that we can be able to, or we would be able to store all the waters of the western rivers, the so-called western rivers of River Indus. So at max, what we can do as of now is fill up the reservoirs which are there, but we also have to understand that all these western rivers, whatever construction has happened in terms of generation of electricity, etc., those are mostly the run of the river projects where the storage capacity is not created, because as per the Indus Water Treaty, there has to be a minimal flow which has to be maintained into Pakistan. Now, regarding your second question, can some other country do it to us as well? And the answer is yes. If we take a look at China's policy making and the noises which are coming out of Beijing, now for the past 10 to 12 years, Beijing has been testing the waters in terms of its plan to construct 5 dams in the region of Tibet, thereby blocking the flow of river Brahmaputra. Now one has to understand that if China goes ahead with this construction, there are major ramifications that India could face in terms of the water supply in the entirety of Brahmaputra plain, which we know is majorly agrarian and is dependent on that water for irrigation purposes. But at the same time, we also cannot ignore the impact of the construction of these dams in a highly seismic zone, which can trigger massive earthquakes and seismicity in the already unstable region of northeastern states. And that diminishing of the water flow into the eastern part of India means lesser water flow into the region of Bangladesh. And this can always give rise to water conflicts, with Bangladesh would always demand that give us more water, and thereby we can see again the uprising of issues like the Teesta water sharing, which has been a sticking point between India and Bangladesh for a very, very long period of time. So yes, what you are saying is what we are basically threatening to do to Pakistan, China can always turn around and do it to us. But the other reasoning is, even if we don't do it to Pakistan, China, in my opinion, is still going ahead with the construction of dams in the region of Tibet.
Right. And in fact, the Lahore Declaration, which was signed when Mr. Vajpayee was the Prime Minister, when he traveled to Lahore, when Nawaz Sharif was the Prime Minister, it also calls Jammu and Kashmir as an outstanding issue, thereby further reiterating that Jammu and Kashmir is going to be an issue which is to be settled bilaterally between India and Pakistan. Although the government of India reiterates that the only outstanding issue is that the part of Jammu and Kashmir, which is under the illegal occupation of Pakistan, that has to be acquired back by India. So that is the outstanding issue on Jammu and Kashmir between India and Pakistan. Now, Mukesh sir, you have a couple of topics to discuss.
Yes, sir.
Let's start.
So the first topic that I am going to discuss is an article which has appeared in page 5 of the international edition, where the article is that India has renewed and extended its claim into the continental shelf area in Arabian Sea, and that has again riled up the side of Pakistanis. Because first of all, let us go into the background. What is this continental shelf? Where is it that India has issued the fresh submission or submitted it? And what are the major ramifications of it? So the basic of it, continental shelf, it is the extension of the landmass into the sea, where the water is very, very shallow. Now, why it is important? Any region in the ocean where the water is very shallow, in those areas, not only are you able to find certain minerals such as iron deposits, polymetallic nodules, but at the same time, enough reserves of fossil fuels. And that again becomes very contentious. So every country wants to have as much amount of continental shelf area under them, because you have to understand this also directly links to the amount of fisheries and the fishes that you are able to catch and the sustenance of livelihood of millions of people in those areas. Now, when we talk about the extent of the continental shelf that any particular country can have under its jurisdiction and so on, there comes into the action of United Nations Convention Law on the Sea. Now, this UN clause had formed a separate entity, that is Commission for Limit of the Continental Shelf. This 21-member body takes care of all the various different states' claims, as well as what should be the limit to the continental shelf for each of the countries. Now, what is the limit to the continental shelf? Now, here we have to understand there is a concept known as exclusive economic zone. From the coastal area, that is from the shoreline, extending up till 200 nautical miles into the sea, that is the exclusive economic zone of any particular country. But that does not mean it is the end of the continental shelf in the ocean. The continental shelf can extend further beyond. And that is where the countries, they submit the documents regarding their claims. And the UN clause also talks about the fact that if the continental shelf continues beyond the EEZ, then the countries can provide the supporting documents. And what do we mean by supporting documents? Hydrological data, geological data, and also the bathymetric reports, that is, the depth of the seafloor in those areas. And these supporting documents, if they basically cement your claim that yes, this is the continental shelf of your region, then you might get access to the subsea area of that particular region. Now, India had submitted this claim quite some time back also, and thereby asking the CLCS to extend the continental shelf limit beyond a certain area. But then we have to understand that when we talk about the western border of India, Pakistan and India share the border across the region of Gujarat. And there we have a disputed region of Sir Creek, which is a marshy area. Now it is in this area where the continental shelf claim of Pakistan basically converges with the continental shelf claim of India. So what India's previous submission was, that was rejected owing to the various different objections raised by Pakistani side. Now what India has done this time is, India has recalibrated and gone back and thereby studied all the hydrological data, and what it has done is it has divided its claim. Now we have to understand that earlier India would submit its claim from all the way to Arabian Sea, Indian Ocean, and then extending to Bay of Bengal. This time what India has done is, India has broken it into various different parts, so that let's suppose one particular region is maybe disputed or there is some objection raised to it, the other areas nonetheless are rewarded to Indian side. Now in this case, as India does this, India has extended its claim furthermore what it had done prior. Now what this means is, presently under the EEZ, that is the exclusive economic zone of India, we had a subsea area of 2 million square kilometer. India seeks to advance it further by 1.2 million kilometers extra. So that means almost doubling it up. And that will have huge ramifications in terms of the amount of resources which we can access. And we also have to keep in mind, it is in this region of Arabian Sea where we have the offshore oil drilling platform of Bombay High. So that is the region which is very, very rich in fossil fuels. And the Ministry of Earth Sciences is quite determined and sure about the fact that this time there is no scope of rejection, and even if the rejection happens, they have enough grounds to appeal it to the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. So this is a particular topic which can be relevant for the paper 1, GS paper 1, as well as GS paper 2. And what is important? UN clause and the Commission on the Limit of Continental Shelf, which is a part of UN clause. Now this is one of the article. Now coming to the second article. Now the second article, which has appeared in page 10 of the international edition, is about the urban heat island and the impact of it. Now, due to climate change, what we are observing is that there are extremities of heating and cooling being experienced in different parts of the world. Now, the popular perception is that due to global warming, there will be consistent heating across the planet. But that is not the case. Certain areas get colder and colder, while certain areas get warmer and warmer. Now, when we talk about the warmer regions, let's take it from India's example. All of you would have experienced this, that when you move from the rural countryside into the heart of the urban areas, the temperature tends to rise. It is owing to the construction, it is owing to the reduced amount of reflection of solar rays, and as a consequence, the urban areas get very, very heated up. And this phenomena of urban areas indicating a temperature anomaly which is higher than normal, that is what is considered as an urban heat island. Now, urban heat islands have been known to cause heat-related deaths for a long period of time now. That is why we see in almost all the urban areas of our country, there are large number of deaths due to heat waves during the summer season, be it in Ahmedabad, be it Delhi NCR, be it any particular urban area if you consider which is clustered. And that is the same case across the world. But a new study has found out that when you go for this kind of construction, yes, in the tropical countries, it can lead to creation of warmer conditions. But when it comes to the countries in slightly higher latitude, for example, Moscow, for example, if you consider, let's suppose, Rotterdam. Now, in those areas, this creates a much needed warming effect. Otherwise, the climate change is basically creating such cold waves in these areas that there people experience cold related deaths. And it has been found out that this kind of construction in the urban regions, while it might be considered hazardous in the lower latitudes, in the higher latitudes, it can save lives by almost 11.5 to 12% depending upon where the city is situated or located. Now that is the basic background of entirety of what is written in the article. But what we can summarize out of it for the requirement of civil services. So oftentimes you get asked a question about what should be the measures in order to combat climate change? What can be the various adaptive initiatives which can be taken? Now, in this particular case, we have to understand that one size fits all policy, that okay, all the urban areas should look like this, all the rural areas should look like this. This simply doesn't work in the face of how the planet is changing. That means in the regions of the higher latitude, we need a different kind of a habitat. And in the region of the lower latitude, we need a different kind of an urban habitat which can promote airflow and a natural cooling down of the particular region. So it also impacts the health of the individuals and help in reducing the mortality rates. This is a particular topic very, very relevant again in GS paper 1 and GS paper 3 of the examination. So these are the two articles broadly which are relevant for the examination. And now over to Shyam sir.
Before you start, Shyam sir, I was going through the comment section. What is this CNA analysis of today? I told you right at the start that we are at Manzil 2025, which is a flagship event of Unacademy for the civil services preparation. We are at the venue and there is no smart board available here. So we can't show you the newspaper articles. We can't write whatever we are discussing. But even then, we try to ensure that your current affairs preparation should not be interrupted. That is why somehow we are taking this session. Hopefully, you will be able to understand whatever we are saying. But we apologize for not bringing the smart board or any other infrastructure through which we can display these articles and write whatever is required for the exam. Over to you, Shyam sir.
So there is an article in the Hindu newspaper regarding pandemic agreement. So one event in the last 15 years which had a larger impact not only on the people but also on the global market has been the COVID-19. The two very important lessons that we have learned because of the COVID-19 is, one, these kind of pandemics are not just going to be limited to one country because of interconnectedness. For example, COVID-19 itself, it started in China but spread to the global market, had a bigger impact which led to loss of lives as well as economic activity was disrupted. So these kind of pandemics are not going to be limited to a particular region. The spread will be wide, will be global. And the second important lesson is that the impact of these kind of pandemics is not uniform and not the same across all the countries. During the pandemic, what we have learned is bigger countries, developed countries were able to limit the impact because of the research and development, because of access to vaccines, because of access to food grains. Whereas smaller countries, poorer countries, especially the African countries, were highly impacted. There was one point of time when there was a discussion whether there will be food security regarding the African countries. They were not able to get access to sufficient food grains. And that is the precise reason. There was a discussion, deliberation that has been conducted amongst the member countries of World Health Organization. And after the discussions for more than 3 years, multiple times being held, we have arrived at an agreement by the name of Pandemic Agreement. The two very important points of this agreement is, one, the pathogen access and benefit sharing. What is essentially this model of a PABS? Let's say there is a pandemic like event now, there is an outbreak of a virus, the research which is conducted, the information which is collected will not be limited to one country. Now this information will be shared with other countries as well. And the second very important point, which has been a point of contention, is the idea of technology sharing. Let's say there is a developed country which has invested a lot of money and it has developed a certain, let's say, vaccine which is patented. Under the model of technology sharing, the member countries wanted this technology to be shared with other countries as well. But many of the countries, especially the European countries, the developed countries, have opposed this. Their argument is, we have invested a lot of money, patent is allocated to us, we do not want to share this patent with other countries. And if this information is shared, then there is no incentive for the pharmaceutical companies to invest and develop this research. And that is the reason, under this agreement, there is no automatic sharing of the technology. If the member countries agree, that is, if the member countries mutually agree, then the technology will be shared. But the four very important things, other things that you need to make a note of are: one, this is a legally binding agreement. That is, once this agreement is signed and implemented across all the member countries will have to stick to the provisions of the agreement. Second one, this agreement will promote the concept of equity. That is, the member countries which are rich, only they will not be having the benefit of, let's say, the access to food grains, access to medicines, access to the medical equipments, etc. Even the poorer countries will get access under this particular agreement. Third very important point is, what will be the stand of the USA government? Because during the negotiations, the members who are representing the side of the USA walked away from the negotiations. And the fourth very important point you need to make a note of here is, already USA has announced that they will be moving out of WHO. They have stopped funding not only to WHO but also to World Trade Organization. So in that particular instance, where this country contributes very high, generally more than a fifth of the total amount of contribution, to what extent these kind of measures will be helpful, you will have to wait and see. But as of now, this is a very good improvement, very good initiative, good outcome, not only for the developed countries as well as for the developing countries. You will have to wait and see how India will adopt it, how India will ratify in the coming days. So this is a very important article in the context of GS paper 3, Science and Technology. So now I'll hand over the discussion to Abhishek sir.
So for UPSC preparation, schemes are very important, and specifically for prelims. You have to look at the performance of certain schemes, but because it is in the newspaper, you also have to now revise certain schemes. So the scheme which was in the news was SMILE, which is support for marginalized individuals for livelihood and enterprise. Now, there's a certain context to this article that if you go by the 2011 census, there are close to 3.7 lakh people who are based on begging, which is called beggary. And a 2024 handbook of the Ministry of Social Justice also points out that 6.6 lakh households in rural India are actually based on some form of charity or some form of begging. Now, based on this concept, the Government of India introduced in 2022 a scheme which is called SMILE, as I told you, supporting marginalized individuals. And there were two components. First, for transgenders, and second, for beggary and begging in based individuals. Now, we don't have data for the transgender aspect, but a lot of money was allocated, 100 crores over 4 years. And now that between 2013 and 2026, which is the last year of the performance, the utilization of the fund and the question marks related to the data is quite interesting, sir. From 100 crores, only 14 crores is used. And 1/4. And more than that, when the census data is telling us that 3.7 lakh people are based on beggary, the scheme has only identified 9,000 individuals who actually have consented to be based on beggary. And also, only 970 have been rehabilitated. With rehabilitation, there is skill development, there are loans, they are trying to make them entrepreneurs. And therefore, there are two things which come into focus. First, the scheme itself, it's a central sector scheme, which means that it is funded by the center itself. The ministry is Ministry of Social Justice. Second thing is, sir, this underutilization of funds and the aspect that with social justice and society, there is a certain lethargy when it comes to government policy. And it also points out to the cartels. When it comes to beggary, when it comes to transgenders, there's a lot of cartels which work which don't allow individuals to come out. So it cannot be just push and pull. It has to be something where the government also has to enforce it in the right way. But for you right now, because it's in the news section of the newspaper, you have to make sure that you revise SMILE. You should know a central sector and the difference between central sponsored and sectors. In sponsored, the state and the center will share the cost. However, in the central sector scheme, it is the center which pays for this. And second is, this is now becoming a tendency with regards to education, with regards to health, and now society and social justice. There's a certain underutilization of funds which makes no sense. And therefore, for UPSC, GS paper 1 or GS paper 2 specifically, and GS paper 1 society part, you can get a question on underutilization of funds with regards to social justice schemes, and you can get a straightforward question on what are the different aspects which I've already told you. Back to you, sir.
These were the 5 topics that we had to discuss today, but we will quickly go through your comments. If you have any questions regarding the topics that we have covered today, please let us know and we will one by one take a look at these questions. Chetan sir is with us, but he is not feeling well currently. Hence, he had to skip this session. Aditya, we can meet. The question is, how should India respond to Pakistan? How should Pakistan be taught a lesson?
In terms of the entire gamut of response, or
Yes.
So as this has been talked about quite frequently in the past few days, the response cannot be only unidirectional in terms of military, and we have seen diplomatic actions being taken as well. At the same time, what India can learn from its previous endeavors in this particular scenario is that we have always managed to galvanize the support of the global community. So that is where our diplomatic community has to go on the overdrive, not only in the form of the present diplomats that we have, all the various different institutions where we are represented, but we also can end up utilizing one of the strongest arms in our foreign policy, and that is the diaspora. India boasts one of the largest and the strongest and one of the most influential diaspora as compared to any other country in the world. So we can utilize that, create a kind of a public opinion. And then yes, there has to be a militarily punitive action which should hurt the perpetrators of this particular heinous act. And what that can involve in the form of maybe a strike, or maybe repetitive strikes, or maybe a covert action which can disarm the entire infrastructure of that particular area. We can keep on bombarding those launch pads across the region of the line of control and even across international border in those areas, so that there is some amount of hesitation on that particular side. But we have to understand that we are not dealing with a regular nation out there. Pakistan is not like any other country out there. It is, as famously said, countries have armies. Here, the army has a country. And every few years, when the army wants its presence to be felt, it will engage in these kind of activities. So we have to always keep ourselves at maximum readiness as well. We have to admit that there have been lapses. So what are those lapses? We have to rectify as soon as possible.
How do you look at when Pakistan, who is currently the non-permanent member of the Security Council, it has also asked for an investigation, and they are saying that we will cooperate with an independent investigation. How do you look at that?
I look at it with a slight amount of skepticism, because we should not forget that when the Pathankot attack happened, at that point of time, India went out of its way and allowed...
Gave access to ISI.
ISI came in. That never happens. And ISI came in to investigate, and what happened as a result of it? We never heard what happened and any of the perpetrators in Pakistan being brought to justice. That is why the frustration was so high at the time of the Uri attack that we went ahead with the surgical strike.
And how do you look at, is Pakistan having the advantage of its geography? Because there was a time when it is still close to United States, which was once a superpower. Now, whether it is or it is not, United States under Donald Trump, they're fast trying to recede from the global map and they want to focus on America first. And now there is China, which is fast emerging as the world superpower. Pakistan seems to have this geographical advantage that it is always on the right side of the world power. United States previously, China now. And they are consistently spending heavily on their defense budget. Whereas in India, we don't spend that much as Pakistan does in terms of the contribution to the GDP.
In fact, I would further your point by saying that not only China and US, Pakistan, it is even Russia. And Pakistan is even quoting Russia, and Russia is also keen on deepening ties with Pakistan. So that is owing to the location of Pakistan.
Is it because we are moving closer to United States and that's what is making Russia vary, or is it the Chinese influence on Russia?
No, there is a very simple principle which is followed in the case of international relations. That is the principle of rimland. We have to understand that it is not the first time that Russia has been interested in accessing Arabian Sea through Pakistan. Even prior to that, you had an attack in Afghanistan, you had the invasion in Afghanistan. So what the theory of rimland, which was proposed by Spikeman, that tells us that in these entire coastal areas, that is from Iran, Pakistan, India, coastal areas of China, access and control of these areas are very, very important if you want to dominate the Eurasian region. And that is why the global powers for the past century have been trying to gain access and trying to gain favors with the countries which are situated across the coastal areas. That is why you see the US action in West Asia, Middle East, the region of Pakistan, in the East Asian region, all the way till the region of Japan. Now, what has been turning out in the recent years is that Pakistan, owing to its economic collapses, is turning out to be slightly irrelevant. In the sense that as we move ahead, China wants access through Pakistan into the warmer waters. Otherwise, China is forced into the choke point of Malacca Strait. So China wants that access. So there is no belittling the fact that China and Pakistan will always have a very deep relationship, but it is the US which is seeking alternatives because US has suffered massively owing to the impact of Pakistan. Now, why US is having a good relation with Pakistan is always better to have a rogue on the good side rather than having a rogue which is your enemy. This is a state which has got one of the largest number of nuclear weapons in South Asia, and US would never want it to be on the bad side. So that is where the geopolitics is playing out. But where India has succeeded in this is, it has managed to successfully de-hyphenate the so-called Indo-Pak region. We had the visit of the US Vice President, and he visited only India. None of his itinerary or none of his statements were about Pakistan at all. And we have been seeing this for some time now, that the US presidents are coming here and not visiting Pakistan or not even mentioning Pakistan. Whereas if you recall the situation two decades back, and there is a kind of a similarity being laid to the Bill Clinton's visit to India, and at that point of time also, there was an attack in the region of Jammu Kashmir. Now, at that point of time, despite the attack and despite the fingers being pointed at Pakistan, Bill Clinton, even though for 5 to 6 hours, went to Pakistan. India was always coupled with Pakistan. We have managed to decouple that. So we are emerging in our own right, whereas the other country is diminishing due to its economic collapses. So we should not pay too much of an attention to it. But yes, we have to be mindful of the geostrategic importance of what we can do as an alternative. Why everyone wants control over or access to Pakistan is to access the region of Central Asia. Now we can help the world develop an alternative corridor to Central Asia. That is where India-Middle East corridor comes into place. That is where international North-South corridor comes into place. So India has had these plannings for some time now, and India has had support of members like Saudi Arabia, US, and European nations in the IMEC, and Russia in the case of INSTC. So we need to go ahead with the implementation phase now, and we need to ensure that wherever funds are required in whichever country, we should maybe borrow from China's playbook and go ahead with that.
And in addition to that, thanks to the Trump policies, now China is more open to having better relations with India.
With India.
In terms of, let's say, trade, in terms of, let's say, people-to-people relations.
Yes.
So I do not think that, unlike earlier situation, China will be overtly supporting the Pakistan argument now. It is more open to having normal relations with India.
And here, in fact, sir, even if you take a look at the Kargil war,
Yeah.
which was waged upon us, at that point of time, again, Chinese and the Pakistanis were very good friends. But China never went ahead and supported Pakistan. In fact, there is the allegation that the General Musharraf's phone conversation, which was leaked from Beijing, there is the accusation that it was leaked by the Chinese side itself to put an end to the war. So I don't think China will overtly take a stand against India. That is something that it cannot afford as of now.
Any other questions if you have, please let us know quickly so that we can answer them. Okay, that is it for today. Thank you for staying with us. Do not forget to press the like button if you have enjoyed this session and got benefited from what we discussed. We'll see you again 12 o'clock on UPSC Unstoppables channel, where Unacademy Manzil event will go live. Thank you so much. Stay safe. All the best.